All right, we are back. We are back with episode dose. You know what I'm saying? We're back with episode dose of the yaps, of the rants, of the uh, whatever we're calling this. I'm not really sure yet. I feel like I gotta make some sort of like name for these types of sessions. Like it's gotta have like if we're gonna be keeping this as a series, I don't even know what the series is fully going to be about yet, but like if it's going to stay around like fitness, health, well-being, whatever, I feel like it's got to be a name around that. So I'll be thinking about that, about what to call these, but for now, we're just going to like leave them as like regular vlogs. Again, I'm going to be doing these pretty much before I actually go train. So I'm going to be like, if you see me like moving around here and like mixing things together, you know what I'm saying? It's just like what I'm drinking for the workout. You know what I'm saying? There's not anything else too crazy. So, yeah, I hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great week and whatnot. Low key, I'm actually going to hold up. I'm going to clip this here. Okay. Okay. I'm going to clip that right there because I realize I need two hands to be doing all this. But again, I hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you guys are having a great day. Um, Today, what I feel like I want to talk about, kind of a continuation from last time. We talked about the whole idea behind like New Year's resolutions. You know what I'm saying? The whole idea of people just getting back into the gym for the new year and like that stereotype of people potentially quitting after a short period of time, and a little bit on like how I personally stayed consistent when I first started with this, right? Again, I don't have this much time. I don't have that much time invested into all this. Like realistically, I only have like 3 or 4 good years invested into all this, but I feel like I've made some pretty decent progress and I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I feel like with what I've made mistakes on, I'm able to vocalize that here, talk about them, and then again, if you get anything out of that, well, that's great. But we talked about that, and we talked a little bit about how understanding your why is important and how that can really help carry you through the beginning. And I also mentioned a little bit about how making training fun is going to be crucial, and it's really going to set you up for long-term success as opposed to just relying on that why. And that's really the whole kind of what I wanted to talk about all for today, because it just makes the most sense. Where, yeah, sure, understanding and using your why is going to help you, especially in the beginning, and can even help you throughout the entirety of it. But also, like, I don't know, for me, like, it's great, but at the same time, you don't need to make training that deep. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like a very healthy way to also go about it, again, understanding your why, that's super crucial. But long term, thinking long term here, you're more inclined to do things if you find them enjoyable, right? That's just kind of human nature. That's with anything. And so for me, I learned that if I'm able to make training or going to the gym fun, whatever that looks like for me, I'm going to be more inclined to want to go, right? It's just kind of putting two and two together. So when I found out how to make training fun for me, my brain didn't even need to kind of think about, oh man, I need to go today, or like, shoot, I wish I didn't have to go today. I just switched over to like, oh, I'm going today, and that's it. Kind of just like waking up, brushing your teeth, and whatnot. It's just kind of it's just kind of, you know, natural for you to do, right? Once you start developing that routine and your brain just automatically thinks like, yeah, this is just something that I have to do, that I want to do. I'm not going to put much thought into it, so I'm just going to do it. And that's, I feel like, where I talked about before, you don't need to make it so deep, you know? So like long term, you don't need to wake up and keep saying like, oh, you need to give yourself a pep talk. Like, man, I'm doing this because of X, Y, Z. Sure, you can do that. But again, making it a routine, making it some sort of part of your life, finding some sort of balance with this so it's integrated into your life. That's, I feel like, where I, you know, found the most, that's where I found it the easiest to kind of just, you know, make this a staple, make this something that I do pretty consistently. So I don't really have to think about it, right? You just kind of do it. So, you know, whatever that looks like for you, unfortunately, I cannot answer that for you. What makes the gym fun or what makes training fun for you, that's all individual, right? As, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? I can't really tell you this is what you need to do so that you have fun training. That's just something that you kind of have to discover on your own. That's something that you kind of have to experiment with. But I can give some pointers, right? And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then you just have to kind of find something else. For me, I mentioned in the previous video that growing up, I really wasn't an athletic kid, right? So I'm already cooked in that sense. I can't use that to my own benefit, right? I didn't grow up being like, man, I like athletics. So like playing sports like basketball, soccer, things of that sort, yeah, I'll do it, but do I find it the most enjoyable? Probably not. So I can't really leverage that, right? So that's automatically like crossing that option out for me. But growing up, I felt like I did enjoy other things, other aspects of life that made me feel competitive. A very good example of that is video games. And I feel like a lot of people probably can relate to this. I feel like a lot of people do have a competitive spirit, but they just have it in, you know, maybe a different area than others. For me, it was never sports. I mean this in a very respectful way, of course. You know what I'm saying? I know in the place that I live, I'm probably going to be shunned for saying this, but I really couldn't care that much for sports. That's just me, though. That's just the reality of it. That's just not who I am. I don't really care for that. But I do like video games. I played video games a ton growing up, and I really like that competitive aspect of it. And so one thing that I did, and kind of what I realized at that point, is like maybe I can apply that competitive, my bad, I'm trying to find like a, oh, here it is. Maybe I can apply that competitive kind of thing that I like and apply it to fitness, right? So if it's not sports, that's cool. Well, maybe weight training, strength training, I can still be competitive in that. It's just going to be a bit different, right? Instead, I can be, in a sense, competitive with myself. So for me, once I kind of started training, and this is also it ended up working really well for me because it made me learn and realize that you just have to do this if you really want to grow efficiently as a lifter. But once you realize that you need to be competitive with yourself and you're always trying to chase a new record in terms of like just getting stronger, that is going to really, really, really make it more effective and efficient for you to grow muscle. Before, and this is, if you remember from the last video, I talked about how the first 2 years, those were kind of years that I slacked off. Didn't really take training too seriously, really wasn't too consistent with it. But once I learned how to train properly, that's when things started kind of, you know, I started seeing results pretty quickly. When I started to kind of make that realization that I can be competitive in the gym and, you know, try to beat records that I previously had, and I took that more seriously, that's when I started seeing results even more. And that also helped me with finding joy in actually training, because every single training session for me, you know what I'm saying, I'm not trying to sound like a Goggins here, but it made me try to just be better and be the best that I can be and beat the previous record or the previous session that I had, you know, in whatever way that looked like for the day. An example of that, say for instance, and I'm just choosing this exercise right now because I am really, really trying to get better at this exercise because I've always not put that much effort into it, not found a lot of joy in it, if I'm being honest. And the reason why I probably didn't find that much joy in it is because I just wasn't training it properly, but is the bench press. The barbell bench press has been something that I've like always really thought about, but I kind of neglected because I really wasn't that good at it and I felt like I plateaued on that exercise a lot. So recently, with like all the things that I've learned over these past couple of years, I really started to take that exercise in particularly seriously. And every single time that I am training that exercise, I'm always trying to find a way to be better than the last time. So whether that's going for one more rep, you know, from my previous session, kind of like a PR, a personal record, whether that's increasing the weights, well, you know, I do it in a couple of different ways so that I don't plateau and also not to injure myself because, and this is even something we can talk about injuries in a whole another section because that's also super important. I definitely don't recommend you trying to go for a 1 rep max every single time you're doing anything because that's how you can very easily snap yourself up, especially if you don't have your technique pretty on point. So, you know, you find different ways to beat your previous record, but once I actually, you know, discovered that about myself, like, man, I really do enjoy beating my previous record and just kind of continuously doing that with everything that I do in terms of training, I pretty quickly just started enjoying training. Like I didn't really have to think about it. I actually found training as like an outlet or like I used it as an outlet or like as an outlet for like, you know, having something fun to do like during the day. So if I'm like either, you know, at the time if I was in school, you know, if I did all my school stuff and finished all that, it was kind of like something fun for me to do afterwards. Like, oh, I'm going to go train. I'm going to go try to do this, you know, thing, try to beat this record that I previously had. You know, and now with work, you can kind of consider it the same for work. It's the same kind of concept here. So for me, once you actually start finding out how to make these things enjoy, you know, for me, that's how I found it enjoyable for me. But once you finally start, you know, finding out how to make these things enjoyable for yourself, that's where I feel like you'll really hit that a kind of sweet spot for training in terms of how to stay consistent. Because you're going to find yourself just wanting to naturally go. You don't really have to think about it. It's not going to be some sort of burden for you. You're going to want to actually go train because it's going to bring you some sort of joy, you know? So I feel like that's kind of where I want to leave that topic, you know, how I want to leave it off. For those of you that feel like you have a very competitive spirit, but maybe it's just in a different area, maybe try doing something like that. Try thinking a bit more competitively when you go to the gym. Think of it more so as, you know, how am I trying to better myself or beat my previous record? You know, have that kind of mindset for yourself so that you're gonna find some sort of joy for it. Now, for those of you that don't have that competitive spirit or aren't competitive in that way, that's fine. I feel like you can still find some sort of joy in, you know, just being healthier or being more active. Weight training doesn't have to be for everyone. I feel like everyone could benefit from having some sort of muscle on them, but you know, you don't have to be a power lifter or a bodybuilder or train in that way to be quote unquote healthy, right? You can find a different way to do that, but you really should leverage what you actually enjoy to do so that it's just kind of second nature for you. And again, once you figured out like what that is, you're not going to have any problems going anymore. It's going to be pretty much cruising for you. Now, some days you still might feel like, you know, you don't want to go or it's lazy, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty natural for you to go. You really don't have to kind of like dig yourself out of bed or whatever. You know, when you first started and you didn't really know like the why or, you know, how to make it fun. So you just find a way to make it fun for yourself. For those of you that like sports, maybe still continuing this sports even into your adulthood. So finding some sort of recreational league, you know, that's still you being active, and maybe you can put a little bit of weight training on top of that. And I know with a lot of these sports, these athletes could benefit, and they do benefit from having more muscle mass on them. So you can also look at it in that lens. Maybe you don't care for weight training, but you really want to become a better soccer player or a better basketball player. You know, a lot of these guys, they're not the most jacked in the world, but they do have a decent amount of muscle mass on them. And they definitely do benefit in the sport with that. So you can kind of look at it in that lens, right? Maybe you don't care so much about putting on muscle mass or trying to beat your previous lifting record, but you want to become a better athlete. Well, one thing to do to become a better athlete is to weight train. That's something that you just inevitably have to do. So you can kind of use that as additional motivation to actually help you with training or even just playing basketball or whatever it might be, right? So it's all perspective. It's really all perspective. You just have to figure out what your perspective is. Again, for me, it's just, I like lifting weights and beating my previous record, so I use that. I don't really have to like think about my why anymore. I just kind of do it, you know? So I feel like I'm gonna leave it all at that. I've been yapping for a bit now. I don't even know how long I've been yapping for, but I feel like, yeah, that sums up that topic. For the next time, we're gonna go ahead and pick it up and talk about something else. Maybe something continuing off of the first video, maybe something from this one, or maybe just a completely new topic that I think about. So I don't really know yet. But if you've waited until the very end, appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll catch you for the next one. Peace out, guys.